Under the dazzling lights, the stage became the center of the world's attention. The atmosphere was tense, as if even a single blink could cause one to miss a crucial moment. The auditorium was packed with influential figures, from technology leaders to those passionate about exploring the future. Every eye was fixed on the center, where Elon Musk was about to appear. The cameras were ready, broadcasting every second to millions of viewers across the globe. Rows of American flags stood tall behind the stage, adding a sense of solemnity to the event of historical significance. Below, the audience waited with a mix of anticipation and excitement. No one knew that tonight would not go as planned. In the front row, Grimes sat quietly, watching. On her lap was A-12, her 4-year-old son. His eyes filled with mischievous curiosity. Their unexpected presence sparked murmurs among the crowd. But Grimes paid no mind. What concerned her more was how to keep her restless child in her arms when everything around him was far too fascinating for an energetic toddler. Elon stepped onto the stage, exuding confidence, his sharp gaze sweeping across the auditorium before he walked straight to the microphone. A thunderous round of applause erupted, but he only nodded slightly, placing his hand lightly on the podium. "Thank you all for being here tonight." His voice rang out, clear and full of passion. "We are getting closer to a future that once existed only in imagination. And today, I am going to share with you something that could change everything." The entire hall fell silent, waiting for the groundbreaking revelation he was about to unveil. But while Elon spoke, another story was unfolding in the front row. A-12 was completely unfazed by the formality of the evening. He glanced at his father, then at the stage lights, his little legs swinging as if he was debating something very important. Finally, unable to contain himself any longer, he tugged at his mother's sleeve, his voice filled with excitement. "Mom, I want to go up there." Grimes leaned down, gently holding her son's shoulders, her voice a quiet but firm whisper. "Now is not the time. Sweetheart, Daddy is speaking." But the boy wasn't listening. When the camera accidentally panned to the front row, millions of viewers worldwide saw him suddenly wriggle free from his mother's grasp, his small legs dashing toward the stage with surprising determination. At first, the audience chuckled, thinking it was just an adorable moment. But when A-12 didn't stop, the laughter quickly turned to astonishment. Elon caught sight of his son from the corner of his eye. He hesitated for a split second, but before he could react, the boy had already reached his side. And then, the unexpected happened. A-12 stretched out his tiny hands and confidently grabbed the microphone. The entire auditorium fell silent. A moment of absolute stillness enveloped the room as thousands of eyes fixated on the young boy. The stage lights shone down, illuminating the small figure standing there, gripping the microphone tightly. A-12 showed no fear or hesitation. He stood amidst hundreds of curious gazes, completely unfazed by the presence of the audience or the cameras broadcasting live to millions of viewers. Grimes shifted slightly, ready to reach out and pull her son back. But then she froze. She knew it was too late. The space was filled with murmurs, mixed with scattered laughter. The crowd's reaction was divided between surprise and amusement. No one was sure whether this was a spontaneous moment or a carefully planned stunt. Elon stood still for a few seconds, then raised an eyebrow and gave a slight smirk. "It seems we have an unexpected speaker." His tone carried a hint of humor, but his eyes quickly darted toward Grimes, as if gauging her reaction. On stage, A-12 tightened his grip on the microphone, looking down at the vast auditorium with a calm expression. He remained silent for a few seconds, but rather than appearing nervous, he seemed to be carefully considering his words. Then, in a clear yet confident voice, he spoke. "Dad once told me, one day, machines will be smarter than humans." The words fell like a thunderous explosion across the hall. All sounds nearly vanished. A few awkward chuckles echoed, but most of the audience sat in stunned silence, their expressions shifting, not just amused, but contemplative. Did this 4-year-old truly understand what he was saying? Or was he merely repeating something he had overheard from his father? Elon hesitated for a brief moment. For an instant, his expression stiffened before he quickly regained his composed demeanor. But those who paid close attention could see the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth, a rare reaction. One even he might not have expected. Grimes raised a hand to her mouth. Her eyes filled with astonishment. She looked at her son, then at Elon, as if trying to predict what would happen next. The atmosphere in the hall grew thick. The initial laughter had faded, replaced by a silence laden with meaning. Everyone understood that this moment was no longer just a humorous mishap. It had become something bigger. Something deeper. A-12 stood still on stage, his small hands gripping the microphone, his innocent yet determined gaze scanning the audience. The entire hall seemed frozen in time after his words. No sound. No one dared to break the eerie silence. Then, his clear voice rang out once more, shattering the heavy atmosphere. Dad said that the future of humanity will be decided by machines. The words did not come out as a question, nor as a joke, but as a statement. The audience exchanged bewildered glances. Some frowned, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, as if they had just heard something unsettling. Elon, despite being known for his quick wit, appeared momentarily at a loss. He tilted his head slightly, watching his son, as if trying to understand how the boy had interpreted and processed his words. Grimes sat in the front row, her lips pressed tightly together. Her hands unconsciously gripped the edge of her dress, her tense gaze fixed on the stage. A few small chuckles echoed somewhere in the crowd, but no one dared to laugh out loud. It seemed as though they weren't sure whether this was a joke or a serious declaration from the child of a genius. Elon cleared his throat, trying to ease the atmosphere. He took a step forward, his voice carrying a light-hearted yet humorous tone. "Oh, it seems my son really enjoys listening to me talk about technology." Some laughter followed, but it wasn't enough to completely dispel the lingering tension in the auditorium. A-12 didn't react to his father's words. He tilted his head slightly, looking down at the audience as if contemplating something. Then, with an innocent yet firm certainty, he continued, "Dad also said that I could create a machine smarter than humans." That sentence sent another ripple through the hall. Some people sat up straight, and whispers began to spread. No one could ignore the situation anymore. Elon froze for a brief moment, but this time, he reacted more quickly. He placed a hand on his son's shoulder, leaning down, his voice calm but carrying a clear sense of reassurance. "You have big ideas, but let's save the world-changing plans for a few more years. All right?" The boy looked at his father, his eyes filled with contemplation. But after a brief hesitation, he released the microphone, allowing Elon to take it gently. Grimes was already standing at the edge of the stage, signaling for her son to return. A-12 glanced at his father one last time, then slowly turned away. But just before walking off, he absent-mindedly uttered a soft remark, one that once again plunged the entire hall into silence. "But you said so, Dad." Elon hesitated slightly. He watched his son leave, a flicker of thought crossing his eyes. No one knew what was on his mind, but in that moment, it seemed as if the entire room shared the same question. Was this merely the innocence of a child? Or something far deeper? Applause erupted, breaking through the heavy silence that had just settled over the hall. But unlike the usual enthusiastic clapping after an inspiring speech, this one was mixed with hesitation. Some people simply clapped out of reflex, while others were still trying to process the words the boy had just spoken. Elon stood still for a moment, his gaze fixed on A-12, who had just set down the microphone and quickly walked toward Grimes. From a distance, the boy appeared completely calm, as if the words he had just spoken were nothing out of the ordinary. Grimes knelt down, pulling her son into her arms, holding him tightly as if to shield him from the curious eyes of the hundreds of people in the auditorium. She whispered something to him, but her face still couldn't hide her confusion. Then she looked up at Elon, her eyes questioning, almost as if to say, "How are you going to handle this?" Elon took a deep breath and stepped back to the podium, but unlike his usual confident demeanor, this time he seemed more pensive. His fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the podium before he suddenly smiled, a smile meant to break the tension. "I have to admit," he began, his voice lower than usual. "This was not the turn of events I had anticipated." A few soft chuckles rippled through the audience, but they did little to dispel the lingering uncertainty in the air. Elon paused for a moment before continuing in a calmer tone. "But if there's one thing I have always believed, it's that big ideas often come from curious minds. And sometimes, they appear in the most unexpected ways. This time, another round of applause rang out, not as hesitant as before, but more genuine. Yet even so, the weight of the earlier words had not entirely faded. Something still hung in the air, like an unanswered question no one dared to voice. Grimes exhaled softly, leaning back into her seat as she saw Elon gradually regain his composure. She held A-12 close, gently running her fingers through his hair as if to reassure both of them. But in truth, the boy remained completely unaffected by the event. His innocent eyes stayed fixed on the small toy in his hands, as if the outside world had nothing to do with him. On stage, Elon continued his presentation, his voice now steady once more. Yet between pauses, he would sneak glances toward his wife and son, an unconscious reflex. Deep down, he knew this event had taken an unexpected turn. For the audience in the hall and the millions watching online, the speech about groundbreaking technology was no longer the main focus. The most striking moment had been the innocent words of a 4-year-old boy, a seemingly simple remark that had left everyone deep in thought. Elon tried to steer the conversation back to its original topic, but at that moment, XA-812 looked up and leaned close to whisper something into his mother's ear. Grimes flinched slightly, her eyes flashing with concern. "Not now, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice gentle but firm with warning. But the boy had already made up his mind. Without any further hesitation, XA-812 slipped out of his mother's embrace and swiftly made his way to the edge of the stage. The room seemed to freeze. The murmurs in the auditorium vanished instantly, and every gaze locked onto the small boy standing at the center of the spotlight. Grimes instinctively reached out, as if to pull him back, but then she stopped. She knew that in this moment, the boy had taken control of the scene. XA-812 blinked, glanced around the room, then spoke in a clear voice. "Dad said I will create robots better than humans." A simple sentence, yet it sent a shockwave through the entire auditorium. A few soft chuckles arose, but most of the audience was too stunned to react. Elon paused mid-sentence, his eyes flashing with contemplation. But instead of looking flustered, he merely smiled slightly, his eyes filled with intrigue. "It seems we've found the next great innovator." As soon as the words left his mouth, the hall erupted into laughter and thunderous applause. Even so, somewhere in the minds of many, a question lingered. Was this merely the innocent remark of a child? Or a glimpse into a future that Elon Musk was not yet ready to reveal? Laughter still rippled across the hall, but beneath the amusement was an undercurrent of curiosity that had yet to settle. No one had expected that in the midst of a serious technology presentation, a 4-year-old boy would steal the spotlight with just a single sentence. Elon stepped forward, gently lifting his son into his arms as if it were something he did every day. XA-812 wrapped his arms around his father's neck, his clear eyes showing no awareness that he had just become the center of the world's attention. Elon shrugged slightly, turning to the audience with a playful smile. "Let's continue the program before this little guy reveals more secrets I'm not ready to share." The entire hall burst into laughter, but the sense of astonishment had not fully faded. Questions still floated in everyone's minds. Was it simply the innocent words of a child, or an unintended truth that Elon Musk had yet to disclose? After the stage lights dimmed, the backstage area felt noticeably quieter. Elon set his son down beside Grimes, who gently pulled him into her arms, her eyes filled with both curiosity and amazement. Grimes spoke first, her tone half teasing, half contemplative. "Well, it looks like today's presentation didn't go exactly as planned for you." Elon sighed softly, leaning back in his seat. "I still haven't decided whether I should be proud or worried." She raised an eyebrow. "Have you been telling him about your research projects?" He shrugged, offering a half smile. "Just a few small conversations, but I didn't think he'd turn them into a public announcement on live broadcast." The two shared a quiet laugh, though a flicker of thoughtfulness still lingered in their eyes. Elon bent down, gently touching his son's shoulder. "Do you know that tonight, you've made a lot of people think?" XA-812 looked up at his father with innocent eyes. Completely unaware of the waves he had just created, he simply smiled and continued playing with the small toy in his hands as if nothing special had happened. Grimes looked at Elon, a hint of contemplation in her gaze. "Do you think, maybe he actually understands what he's saying?" Elon was silent for a few seconds, then let out a soft laugh. Or maybe, he knows more than we think. Outside, the world was buzzing because of a 4-year-old's words. But here, in this moment, their family was simply enjoying a brief moment of peace, before the media storm officially began. The atmosphere in the backstage room grew quiet for a while. Elon and Grimes exchanged glances, both understanding that what had just happened could become a major topic on news headlines by morning. But here, in this private space, what mattered most was the rare family moment they were sharing. A-12 remained carefree, playing with a small toy in his hands, completely unaware that he had just planted a seed of thought in the minds of millions. The boy tilted his head, looking at his father with curiosity. "Dad, so can I really build a robot?" Elon chuckled, gently ruffling his son's soft hair. "You can do anything you want, son, as long as you stay curious and keep learning." Grimes smiled, wrapping her arms around their son. "But before thinking about building a robot, you have to promise me one thing." XA-12 blinked. "What is it?" She leaned in, whispering softly into his ear, her voice filled with love. "Next time, before revealing any secrets on stage, let Mom and Dad know in advance. Okay?" All three of them burst into laughter. A warm and gentle sound, like a quiet moment of tenderness amidst the noise outside. Beyond the backstage curtain, the world eagerly debated XA-12's innocent words. Was it just a random joke? Or was it truly a hint about the future that Elon Musk was envisioning? Only time would tell. But right now, in this small room, the only thing that mattered was a family, a simple yet meaningful moment, where a child unknowingly reminded the world that imagination has no limits and that the future always begins with the smallest dreams.